Anke Reiffenstuel.
Good morning everyone. Maybe I can
Yes,
may I
yes.
take off? Thank you very much. It's probably better to understand what I'm saying. Good morning everyone. Maybe I can give you a short summary of the meeting, of the bilateral meeting and exchange I just had with President-elect Marcos. We exchanged about the ongoing bilateral cooperation and the cooperation in the international frame, in the multilateral formats, and explored and discussed potential for furthering cooperation in bilateral mutual interest, but also to address global challenges like climate change. I informed President-elect Marcos about the ongoing programs Germany is currently conducting in the Philippines in the framework of of Germany's international climate initiative to address the impact of climate change here in the Philippines. I informed him that so far Germany has provided 25 million euro for climate change related projects in bilateral projects, and that the Philippines is also engaged in regional projects with additional funding on top of these 25 million euro, and that we are currently working on another big program also in the context of climate change. We also exchanged about the priority of President-elect Marcos with regard to food security, and I informed him about the upcoming international ministerial conference on global food security. This also against the background of the impact of the Russian war against Ukraine with regard to the global food security and the challenges on global food security. We also discussed about trade relations, Germany being the largest trade and business partner among the EU member states for the Philippines, and we saw a lot of interest on both sides to further explore on this issue. Specifically mentioned, we discussed the renewable energy sectors, where Germany is having a very strong expertise and engagement. I also underlined the importance Germany attaches to rule of law and safeguarding human rights, and assured him of our continued commitment in this regard. In this context, I also mentioned the German support, contribution and funding of the United Nations Joint Program on Human Rights here in the Philippines. We discussed, and I informed President-elect Marcos on Germany's Indo-Pacific policy guidelines that provide a huge pool of opportunities to cooperate in bilateral, regional and international issues and challenges, and assured him of Germany's commitment to further engage in the region in our common interest to protect the international rules-based order, which also comprises cooperation in the area of maritime security. In this regard, I brought to his attention our cooperation with the Philippine Coast Guard. Last but not least, I updated President-elect Marcos on the most recent bilateral agreement representatives of the German and the Philippine government signed in Berlin just last Friday, an MOU on the deployment of Philippine healthcare workers to Germany. I think this is a brief summary of very fruitful discussion and exchange we had. Thank you.
Ambassador, my question. What commitments did the President-elect give you with regard to maritime security and human rights?
We exchanged and we explored this in our joint interest, our common interest in protecting international rules-based order and the rule of law that needs to apply also in the maritime sector. We didn't go into detail, but realized and underlined that we have a common interest to continue cooperation in this field.
Ambassador, the Duterte government previously asked European nations to cut funding to activist groups. One of the biggest partners of activist groups is Germany. Did you discuss that with President-elect Marcos if your nation will continue funding these organizations?
Sorry, I don't quite understand when you say activist group. Activist groups. What do you mean?
Yeah, the activists, the progressive groups, they get their funding from European nations, including Germany, and the Duterte government asked the European nations before to cut funding. Did you discuss that at all in aligned to the commitment to human rights?
We discussed our commitment, or we exchanged about our commitment about Germany's continued commitment in the area of protecting human rights and safeguarding rule of law. We didn't go into details of projects and project funding. As one example of Germany's commitment, I mentioned Germany's funding of the UN Joint Program on Human Rights.
That's right. Last question.
I understand that you've discussed renewable energy. Is the German government willing to support the Philippine government if in case it would like to redevelop its efforts on developing nuclear energy, for example, the revival of the Bataan nuclear power plant?
Renewable energies, of course, is of great importance to us, to Germany, and we exchanged about the experiences and the commitment and the distribution and the shares of renewable energies in our respective countries' power productions. President-elect Marcos illustrated his early commitment to renewable energies by mentioning the wind farms in Ilocos Norte, and we agreed that we need to continue to deepen the discussion since this is an area of mutual interest.
About terms of food security, were there any specific projects that were mentioned in your dialogue?
We didn't speak about specific projects, but I elaborated and explained the upcoming ministerial conference Germany will be hosting and is currently organizing to take place in Berlin end of this month. And I informed President-elect Marcos that we had just forwarded the invitation to the Philippine government this morning. Of course, it's too early to say anything about potential participation or involvement of the Philippine government in this.
Thank you so much, everyone. Her Excellency Anke Reiffenstuel.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.